Stories are history wrapped in context, delivered with emotion. And you put all those things together, and you get a memorable event, situation, person that you're reading about. It's memorable because your emotions are involved. You're engaged. You're using your imagination. Storytelling does that. Storytelling exercises your empathy. You're not just reading that somebody, abolition editor, wrote a paper and he had some hard times. You are feeling what he felt when his office is bombarded and burned out and he's trying to run for his life as his livelihood is going up in flames. You're feeling that empathy. Stories develop empathy in the listeners of it, as well as engaging their imaginations. Stories unleash our creativity because, again, we're not just memorizing facts, we're letting our imaginations run a little bit, fill in with color. You can hear what's happening, you can see what's happening. If your imagination is vivid, maybe you can feel what's happening. Stories do that. They transform information into a kind of a revelation. And that's what we want to do. We want to be able to tell history in stories so that people are transformed.
Jackson is such a historic place. We look through the many years that Jackson's history has had. So many significant events have happened here in the county, but the stories aren't always being told. So when we found out that there was a county historical society operating, that was a missing need, I think, here in the county, to be able to talk about those stories and help preserve them, and also bring those stories to light. If we don't tell the stories, they will be forgotten and sometimes twisted. We have the very site claim to fame home of the Republican Party here in Jackson, and while it claims that fame, it's really important to look at the actual history of the site, the anti-slavery movement that happened here in Jackson, Michigan at that site. So telling the stories, to tell them the right way, the proper way, and what is the real history. If we don't tell the stories, they can be forgotten or turned into something that it's not. So having someone to provide actual authentic stories that are researched is really a valuable asset.
One of the most interesting stories is in regard to the DeLand family. They lived at the intersection of Mechanic and Franklin Street. Their house was a safe house for freedom seekers, and the son, Charles DeLand, actually transported freedom seekers in his father's lumber wagon from their home to the next stop east, which would be either Grass Lake or going on to Ann Arbor, until the ultimate goal was to get to Detroit, and from Detroit, Canada. Just telling the story of the secrecy of that operation. It was done at night, out of sight, out of mind, under the radar. They didn't want people to see what they were doing, but they wrote about it. But as I'm reading them, they came to life. They would read about the sights, the sounds, even the textures, and I think that if that intersection could speak today, it would tell tales probably of old wooden wagon wheels creaking along Mechanic Road, maybe on the cobblestone road, and then getting to the dry thud of the dirt when it reaches their property. Maybe you would hear, if the air could replay the sounds, maybe you would hear the whispers of people saying, "Open the barn door," "Where's the lantern? I'm looking for the light." You would feel maybe the tension in wanting to get under cover as quickly as possible and not be out in the open. And to be able to go to that intersection, plant your feet on the ground, and say, this is where that happened. This is not a story in a book. You're standing on the spot. You're absorbing that history as you're standing there. And I can just imagine the stories that those occupants would have to tell if they could tell tales of hiding places within the house, within the barn. Where were they? Was it behind the stairway? Was it a trap door in the barn? Just letting your imagination go is very intriguing.
Jackson is such a historic place, so many events, from the car industry to the mining industry, even corsets. So many unique things happened here in Jackson, and the stories are often not told. We've tried to look at some regular things that you pass by every day, such as engine 5030 on Lansing Avenue. You drive by this engine every single day sometimes, or very often, but you don't know the history behind it. Where did this engine go? What did it look like functioning? We could take the T-33 aircraft at the Jackson County Airport, this Vietnam training jet that was flying in the air at one point when I was here. Why is it here? So being able to tell those stories, I think, is something that's really excited them a lot.
We have, just as a case in point, a charter bus coming to Jackson from Ohio because they want to visit Underground Railroad landmarks and sites. A bus full of 40, 50 people. Those people have to eat lunch somewhere. The bus has to gas up somewhere. While they're in Jackson, they're also going to be visiting other places, maybe the Jackson Fudge and Chocolate Factory, So all that ripples out into an economic impact, and that's just one example. There's other tourists coming, there's other ways that it has beneficially impacted Jackson in terms of the finances. I think educationally, our society has benefited Jackson because it's been a perfect supplement for education. Like I said, you can read about it in a textbook, or you can go visit these places.
It is my hope that Jackson is looked at as a historic place on the map. Jackson has such a deep history, but it's not looked at as such on the map at all. People don't look at Jackson as a historic place outside of the city. So being able to put Jackson on the map as a historical place by telling these stories, such as the story of the Civil War here in Jackson, where it was a hub next to Detroit, for that time period, that's my hope, for it to really be able to be told, continue on teaching these stories. We need individuals to be able to share those stories, young, old, middle, whatever it is. We have to be able to keep preserving our history and telling those stories.